I always had the following existential question: how the fuck Case Closer Detective Conan have so many chapters and has not ended yet? Because it is true. Currently, Detective Conan has been out for almost 30 years, and with more than 1,000 chapters and counting added to the long-running specials and movies, at first glance it becomes frustrating that this famous detective is still not able to catch the guys who gave him that mysterious drug that turned him into a boy. He may be a very capable detective, but when it comes to the dark organization, well, he is not so capable, shall we say. Or is he? But what if I told you that in the more than 1,000 chapters that make up this famous series hides an incredibly good plot, a thriller of action and mystery, where expectations and the power of deduction of the viewer are challenged, plots whose arcs are meticulously developed for seasons and seasons, and whose outcomes can even leave you with your brain bursting? That is what we will talk about in this new series of videos. We will do a recap where we are going to discard the tons and tons of filler that this series has, and we are going to go straight to the good stuff. I invite you to review together the complete history of Detective Conan vs. the Dark Organization. Chapter 1: Getting to know the organization. Obviously, the story between these two starts in the first episode. In episode 1, the roller coaster murder case. The story begins when Shinichi Kudo, a 17-years-old student, goes to an amusement park with Ran, her childhood friend. Then while they were riding on a roller coaster car, a murder occurs. Behind them were sitting two men in black. Shinichi solves the case, but is shocked by the presence of these two men in black. At the end of the day, after saying goodbye to Ran, he decides to follow them to investigate and catches them right in the middle of a money transaction with the owner of a company they were extorting money from. Unfortunately, they catch him, and instead of killing him, they decide to give him a new drug that they had never tried on humans before and whose effects were still unknown. So, that's how Shinichi became a boy and begins his story as Detective Conan. The next mention these two men in black guys would occur in episode 5, the case of the bomb on the Shinkansen train, where Conan and his new friends were traveling on a bullet train to Kyoto, and in the middle of the trip they meet these two guys, who seem to be the same guys in black that gave him the drugs, but unfortunately, they only looked alike. However, these two guys had planted a bomb on the train that Conan had to find. And this is where the first major discordance of the series with the manga occurs, as it is originally shown that indeed those men in black were the guys from the Dark Organization. Also, in that chapter Conan learns of their secret names Gin and Vodka. And from then on the Black Organization isn't mentioned more until episode 13. The murder case of the strange wanted person. The episode begins with Conan reading in the newspaper about the theft of 1 billion yen, to which he does not pay much attention. A girl named Masami Hirota arrives at Kagoro's office asking to find her father, whom they quickly find, but who is killed days later. Upon learning of this, Kagoro attempts to contact Masami that has disappeared. They then come across another detective who was also looking for Masami's father, but the one who asked him was a supposed missing brother. When they go looking for this so-called lost brother to find clues to Masami's whereabouts, find him dead. Conan manages to recognize Masami in disguise when they went up to this person's apartment minutes earlier and immediately connects the 1 billion yen robbery he read about at the beginning of the episode with this case. In the end, it turned out that Masami's supposed father was one of the colleagues who participated in the robbery along with the supposed brother, but betrayed his two colleagues and escaped along with the loot. Finally, Conan finds Masami talking to the mastermind behind a robbery and saves her just as she was about to be killed. Later the money is found, and Masami, whose real name was Akemi Miyano, turns herself in to the police. The real connection this episode has with the Dark Organization is that in the manga, the brains behind the 1 billion yen robbery was not this guy, it was Gin and Vodka. And this chapter is also important because this is when Conan learns about the existence of the Dark Organization as such. When Masami tells him just before she dies. To fix this plot gap, the episode would be rewritten later, being more faithful to the manga. In episode 128. And finally, this chapter is also particularly important because the murder of this character is what will motivate Shiho Miyano to leave the organization. For those who don't know who she is yet, you will know in a couple of minutes. As far as the anime is concerned, nothing more would be heard from the men in black until episode 54. The video game company murder case. But before we look at this episode, let's first address the other major continuity problem that exists between the anime and the manga up to this point. Since this chapter would officially be the second time Shinichi encounters the organization and still having no clue who they are. while in the manga Shinichi already knows about what the organization is in their names. The only measure taken to fix this detail is in episode 49, The Diplomat's Murder Case Part 2, where Heiji Hattori tells Shinichi about gin and vodka. The only problem is that this only happens in the English dub, so technically it never happened.
Chinese liquor can be strong, but not half as strong as gin and vodka. You should really watch out for those two. They're killers.
Because episode 54 starts like this. Conan and Ran are in a video game company because they will be releasing a game inspired by Kokoro, who was in a hangover that day. When Ran asks him what he drank last night, he starts naming different liquors, which magically makes Conan remember the names of gin and vodka. And this error of continuity is what inspired the English dub to take this step. But let's move on with the episode. As I was telling you, Conan and Ran meet the 3 employees of the company that developed the game, who invite them to try different video games of the company. Then in the middle of the event, Conan accidentally runs into this guy. Seconds later he sees him taking out a briefcase that one of the employees had suspiciously left in the office. Conan decides to follow him, and upon overhearing his conversation on the phone, discovers that this guy's name is Tequila and that he was conversing with none other than gin and vodka. Conan sticks a tracker on his shoe and follows him to the bathroom, and when Conan finally had an important lead to the dark organization, there is an explosion in the bathroom and Tequila dies. In the end, all that happens because one of the employees had installed a bomb inside the briefcase, but that bomb was originally intended for his colleague who just that day had made a deal with Tequila to pass valuable company information inside his briefcase. In the end, Tequila died by mistake. However, upon questioning the employee about the deal he had made and the information concerning the organization, he replies that he knew nothing, only the place where they were meeting, which was a bar near where they were. Then, Conan goes running at full speed towards the bar in the hope of finally finding the organization, and when he is about to arrive, the bar explodes. And that's the end of the 2nd season, and the black organization would never be spoken of again for a very long time, until season 5. In episode 128, the case of the theft of the billion yen from the Men in Black organization, which, as we had already said, is the readaptation of episode 13, following more faithfully the events that happened in the manga. This time we meet again Akemi Miyano alias Masami Hirota, who is working in a bank. Remember that at the end of episode 13 she was still alive, this time participating in the robbery of a truck carrying banknotes. Conan, who just happened to be accompanying Kogoro to do some paperwork, manages to capture the exact moment of the robbery. He then concludes that one of the thieves was Masami Hirota herself. That night, the other 2 colleagues of the robbery were killed by gin and vodka, who wanted to frame Masami, leaving a lipstick at the scene of the crime. When Conan learns of this, goes to her house to investigate and finds the key to a locker where he deduces she was keeping the stolen money. Masami knocks him out and takes the key from him and leaves to meet gin and vodka. Conan manages to get up in time and puts a tracker on her car and follows her to the point where they were going to meet. But he is too late. In the end, the money stolen by Masami was part of a deal he made with the organization to free his younger sister, a deal that gin and vodka broke because they consider her too important for their plans and kill her. In her last minutes of life, Conan arrives, to whom she gives the key where he kept the money and reveals to him that the minds behind the robbery were the dark organization. And it is only then that Conan deduces that gin and vodka are part of this organization. The story continues in the next episode of the hour-and-a-half special, The Girl from the Organization of the Men in Black and the Case of the Murdered Professor. The first part of the episode starts with the arrival of a new classmate at Conan's class, a girl named Tabara. Conan's friends invite him that same afternoon to accompany them on a case they have as the Children's Detective League, the case about the mysterious disappearance of the older brother of one of their classmates. As he collects clues and interrogates his classmate, Conan connects his brother's disappearance to the Black organization. Since one of the last people the missing man was seen with was with a woman dressed completely in black and 2 other guys. In the end of the episode, it is discovered that the brother of Conan's classmate was kidnapped to make counterfeit bills because he was a very good draftsman. Conan, with the help of his friends and Hibara, managed to solve the case and capture the kidnappers. And unfortunately for Conan, the woman in black had no connection with the organization. Later that night, Conan decides to accompany his new classmate to her house, who lives close to where he used to live as Shinichi. That's when out of nowhere, this mysterious girl reveals to him who she really is. She reveals to him that she was part of the Black organization and that she was the person who created the drug that Conan took, the famous apatoxin 4869. This scene, to my opinion, is one of the best of the series. Then Conan is informed that Hibara will be staying with Professor Agasa and tells him more about her backstory. She was indeed a member of the organization named Sherry, and that she wanted to betray them when she learned that they had murdered her sister. When she tried to sabotage the drug research, she was imprisoned by the organization and tried to commit suicide by taking the drug to simply not give them the satisfaction of being able to kill her. But she eventually ended up becoming a girl. It is necessary to mention that Hibara knew that the drug was simply an experimental poison, but that there was also a record of having had side effects on animals because it was not yet finished. She then concluded that the only person killed by the organization and who was missing, which was Shinichi, had become a child just like her. Hibara managed to escape from his prison due to a gas leak. And that's how she ended up with Professor Agasa and later on, going to the same school as Conan. In the second part of Hibara's special, she tells Conan that there is no way to create an antidote for the drug currently, since after her disappearance in the organization they burned all the laboratories and their documents. But there was a little hope of finding some information on one of the floppy disks that her sister kept in the home of one of her former teachers. However, when they go to the professor's house to look for the floppy disks, they find him dead in his office. Finally, Conan discovers that the murderer was one of his former students who had arrived a couple of hours earlier because of an argument they had had. At the end of the episode, Hibara could see the great talent that Conan has in solving an almost impossible case and breaks down in tears in front of everyone while reproaching him for why he could not save his sister. In the post-credits scene. Yes, Case Closed almost always has post-credits scenes. They finally find the floppy disk with the investigations, and when they open it out of nowhere, the files start to erase. Then Hibara remembers that the Dark Organization's devices come with a virus that if these are opened on a computer outside the organization, it automatically deletes all the files. Meanwhile, we get to see Jin and Vodka having a conversation. We learn that originally, they had among their plans to kill the professor who kept the diskettes, and that now their main goal is to find Sherry, which finally brings us to the last part of this small arc of Conan knowing the Dark Organization, when we meet two more members of this organization, one of them being the most important in the whole series. When we get to the three-part episode, Encounter with the Men in Black Organization. Hibara, Conan, and the Resolution. The episode begins with a nightmare that Hibara had where he can see Jin finding her on the street and killing her. And that day, while walking home from school, Hibara finds a black Porsche parked on the street and immediately knows that it is Jin's car. Conan manages to get in and puts a transmitter on it. Then Conan manages to hear Jin and Vodka's conversation in which they were talking about an assassination plan at a funeral to be held in a hotel that same afternoon. The murder will be carried out by a member of the organization called Pisco, and just at that moment, Jin manages to perceive that someone got into his car. Finds the transmitter and destroy it. Inwardly Jin knows very well that it is Sherry, and against all odds, Conan and Hibara sneak into the event in search of Pisco and his future victim. Conan, as a precaution, previously calls Inspector Magyar to warn him about the possible murder. But none of that works out when in the middle of the ceremony the lights go out in the room to project some slides, and in the middle of the darkness, a chandelier falls on a famous lawyer, killing him instantly. The only clues Conan manages to collect are a purple handkerchief and a piece of a broken chain. He then realizes that different colored handkerchiefs were handed out at the funeral and that he only needs to look at the list of guests to whom the purple handkerchiefs were given to draw out the prime suspects. Eventually, Conan manages to find 7 guests suspected of murder. A writer, an American actress, the owner of a car company, a former athlete, a music producer, a professor, and a TV presenter. And when he finally had the suspects in his sights, the doors of the room are opened and people abruptly come out, separating Conan from Hibara, who is grabbed in the middle of the crowd and knocked unconscious. When she wakes up, she finds herself locked in a liquor cellar. Conan manages to contact her through the transmitter of his glasses, and it just so happened that Hibara had a cold that day. And as she was in a liquor cellar, Conan remembers the time when she was able to recover her normal age by drinking baijiu and asks her to do the same so that she will be big enough to escape through the chimney of the place. Meanwhile, Hibara manages to get into a computer left by his kidnapper. In it, she found his registered data and information about the apatoxin 4869 and tries to send the files to the computer of the professor who was waiting outside the building with Conan. Then Conan and the professor noticed that gin and vodka were entering the hotel and that they were directly heading to the room where Hibara was being locked up. The liquor turns her into an adult just in time, and Hibara manages to hide into the chimney when Jin enters to examine the place. At the same time, Conan manages to find out who Pisco is and how he committed the murder. Finally, Hibara climbs up to the roof of the hotel and manages to get to safety. Oh, that's what she thought. Gin and vodka don't know what the real effect of the drug is. They only know that it is a powerful poison. So he starts torturing her by shooting her. They torture her to make her reveal how she managed to escape when they imprisoned her. But not wanting to reveal anything, Jin was about to give her the final bullet when Conan arrives and shoots her with a tranquilizer dart in the back. But the bastard doesn't go down. In fact, he shoots himself in the shoulder to wake up again. Conan quickly hides and shouts at him, distorting his voice so that she must go down the chimney. Hibara falls heavily back into the cellar, recovering her girlish body, moving away from danger. Oh, she thinks so. This time it is Pisco who reveals himself to her. And just as he is about to kill her, Conan appears speaking through a microphone to confuse him. Pisco shoots a box believing to have found him, but it was a trap to fill the place with alcohol. And as conveniently Pisco was just smoking. The place starts to burn. Conan takes advantage of the moment to escape with Hibara, and Pisco stays looking for them. Then Jin appears by the chimney, who informs him that he has been officially fired from the organization for being a jerk.
続きは向こうで見るんだな。
Conan leaves defeated, knowing that in the end, the organization knows Hibara's identity as a girl, putting them all in danger. On their side, the men in black escape triumphantly for another successful mission, and this time revealing one more member. The famous American actress Chris Vineyard, alias Bermudo, who will be staying to live in Japan for a while. And for those of you who don't know how this series continues, let me tell you that this woman will be a headache for the rest of the characters, but that's another story we'll review in the next chapter of this manga summary. I hope you enjoyed this initiative. This is something I have wanted to do for quite some time. I wanted to review this long series and share the most relevant of the plot. In the next video of the summary of this series comes the most shocking revelations of the first 300 chapters. If you have enjoyed the video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe to continue supporting this channel. Thanks for watching.